Hey, how's it going, guys? Today on the show, finally we reveal the dyno numbers from the HRT Stage 2 cam with the phase lock instead of the phase limiter. Stay tuned, we've got the numbers that everybody's been waiting for. How's it going, guys? Welcome to the channel. So today is finally the day that I can reveal my numbers for my HRT Stage 2 cam install with the phase lock. Now, for anybody who's brand new here who hasn't been following my channel or my build, with the original install, I installed this cam last summer in my 2009 Challenger RT, and with that original install, I put a phase limiter in that came with the kit. Everything came with the kit. We had a little bit of trouble tuning it. My tuner Chris said that it was something to do with a specific deal with the 2009 to 2011 cars where it wouldn't let you tune properly, have neural network on. When you had the phase limiter in, you'd have to turn off VVT entirely. So he found a bit of a workaround, but he recommended that I install a phase lock so that we could get rid of that and actually tune it properly how we wanted to be tuned. The one thing that we saw when we had my original dyno graph was right up at the top. We had 402 horsepower. I think it had 401 pound-feet of torque, right around there anyways, and we had just flatlined. The curve would go up, 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 and then just stop and completely flatline. We knew there was a restriction there. We wanted to try to get rid of that. So we installed a phase lock instead of the phase limiter, tore back into the engine this year, and now finally got it back in for a tune. And these are the results of that tune. Now, I'm sorry this took a little bit to get back to you guys on, as I've been hinting on my channel and on my Instagram, which is at Scatpack RT, that I'm dying to release these numbers for you guys. It was just trying to get everything, all the information in one place for you guys so that we could finally reveal these numbers. On top of that, COVID restrictions have finally lifted in our province, and our band had been asked to play a metal festival in southern Alberta, about a 3-hour or so drive away from us. Really huge event that we could not say no to. So we were busy prepping for that. And then we went and played that show, as well as my tuner Chris. He went on his little bit of a run, tuning all over the place. And now I'm back and I just want to get these numbers out. I think I still don't quite have the full dyno graph with the peak numbers right on the graph. However, I do have phone snaps of that graph so you guys can see what we're talking about, because I do want to talk a little bit about the graph and what we're seeing in the graph and how that's changed since the first dyno. Just for reference. But anyways, guys, let's get into it. So here in Edmonton, I'm from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. If you guys don't know, we are seeing a pretty much like a record-breaking summer. It has been so hot this entire summer. I think a lot of Western Canada has been like that. I'm sure a lot of the States has been like that too. It has just been crazy hot up here. So, of course, on our dyno day, it was a 31-degree day, and for us, that is incredibly hot. Usually, we do see a couple 30-degree days, but that is usually as hot as it gets in the city. So, of course, our dyno day falls on a 30-degree day. Now, we did dyno in the morning. There's only 2 cars being dynoed, so there was a really cool Hellcat before me. Hellcat Charger. The gentleman was super nice. I was chatting with him a little bit. He'd got a little bit of work done. He went with bigger injectors, I think a smaller pulley size. I've actually got a quick snap of his run here, of one of his runs. His license plate was absolutely amazing, by the way. And he ended up putting down, I think he was at like 699.4 or something like that as his final numbers for the day. So for next to no, just a few little tiny tweaks, like that is really impressive. I think that puts him up around 100 horsepower over stock. Man, those Hellcats can make a lot of power with very, very little done to them. Super cool. So I was up second anyways. It was about probably 10:30, 11-ish by the time I did get up. So the temperatures were starting to rise. It was actually exceptionally hot, but it was still enough that the air wasn't absolutely murdering my numbers. You know, it gets eventually so hot that it's hard to get really great numbers from the dyno. Just the air is so warm. But we managed to get some good numbers. It was good enough to get a couple runs in, see where we're at, see what was happening. So the first run, we went in and just ran it just as is, just with phase lock, everything the same. And here's that run now. That run, we came up with 417 horsepower and 415 pound-feet of torque. So already we were up a fair bit over, we were up 15 horsepower over my last run. So that was exciting. But although our overall horsepower had gone up on our graph, it was still fairly flat. So we now knew that, okay, we did make some gains horsepower-wise, but we were still seeing restriction. So Chris and his tech that was helping him out suggested, hey, we still have the stock airbox on. Just for the sake of it, let's see what happens if we literally take the stock airbox off. So there's no airbox. There's no restriction at the airbox. Air is flowing straight into the throttle body just for one run in that scenario. It's not like we were taking it and driving down the road or anything with it. Just to see what would happen. That would eliminate it as a source of restriction. If nothing happened, then we can say, okay, the factory airbox is not restricting us whatsoever. And it would just kind of eliminate a couple questions we had as to where's the source of this restriction coming from. So with Chris dialing in a couple quick tweaks, just a few little things he adjusted, and with the airbox disconnected, so there is no airbox that air is coming through. With this run, we ended up hitting 422 rear wheel horsepower and 416 pound-feet of torque, which is amazing. That puts us in Scatpack territory. Now, I've seen Scatpacks dial in around 420 and to about 430-ish, depending on what the deal is with, you know, every dyno is a little bit different, and depending on what their correction factor is, that makes a really big difference as well. So, for comparison's sake, so that we're not hiding anything, it's completely transparent with these numbers and what's going on, so everybody can compare and see what we're working with. These numbers, the 422 and 416 that we hit, was SAE. So that, for anybody who knows anything about dynos, is the lowest reading correction factor that the dyno has. So if you are reading standard, you would read slightly more than that. So that bodes really well. On the lowest correction factor, we are hitting Scatpack numbers, which is amazing. I knew we could get more out of this combination, especially with the promised numbers that Comp Cams was giving for their HRT Stage 2 cam. Super excited to be able to hit some Scatpack dyno numbers, putting down Scatpack power with a 5.7 Hemi with not much for modifications. Stock catback, we've got long tube headers and the cam. Just make sure we put a phase lock in there and that's it. Boom, we hit it, Scatpack numbers. I can't tell you guys how unbelievably stoked I was to be able to hit that. I mean, that was the goal that I had when I set out with my car, to make Scatpack power out of my 5.7 Hemi with just as few mods as possible, wasting as little money as possible, and kind of document that. So you guys, if you like, you can follow my build and check out. Do the same thing to your guys' cars if you want similar numbers, or at least know what kind of performance you'll get if you go the same route that I did. Now, for any of you guys out there that did have a dyno run done with your cars and you got a standard correction factor, just for comparison's sake, I actually asked Chris if it was possible if he could quickly dial up on his dyno just in the computer and just change the correction factor to standard so I could see what the numbers would be, just for you guys to see if you guys wanted to compare your numbers if you did get your dyno done in standard. Got you covered for that. For a standard correction factor, the numbers with the dyno for this setup was 432 rear wheel horsepower and 426 pound-feet of torque. So if you got your Scatpack dynoed and it was a standard correction factor, you probably would have dynoed fairly close to that anyways. If it was a standard correction factor, I imagine you'd probably be like in the 430-ish range. Even if you wanted to compare your buddies who have Scatpacks who went and got a stock dyno run done with their car and they're putting out either standard or SAE, and you just wanted to see, hey, if I did a couple mods like this, where would I compare to my friends and their dyno runs? Well, now you know, with this setup, that's what you run. Now, another thing that I want to show you with my chart, if you look at the upper shelf where we had that flat line and restriction, after we took the airbox off of there, it did start to curve a little bit, but there is still a fairly flat spot in that dyno, which is telling us that there's still a little bit of restriction, which we are figuring is probably at that point the stock catback. It's really interesting because it tells us two things. It tells us, does a freer flowing cold air intake or like a closed box aftermarket intake system actually do anything for horsepower? And if you're a guy running a stock car, I would say, man, probably not really, probably next to nothing. With my car now putting out, honestly, almost 100 horsepower over stock, we put out an extra 5 horsepower when we got rid of the stock airbox. So at 100 horsepower over stock, an airbox would make 5 horsepower difference. So if you're stock and you're thinking of just adding a cold air intake to your car and seeing what kind of difference it would make, that should be an indication that, guys, it probably isn't going to make much of a difference. You're much better off going with a stock Hellcat airbox with that intake tube if you've got a 15 and up. That's the way I would go if I were you guys. If you've got an older car, I wouldn't even worry about it, honestly, unless you were putting in some substantial modifications to your car. At that point, you might see a little bit, but for the most part, your stock airbox is going to honestly cover you for what you need. It's not really going to make a difference. Your car is going to get as much air as it can put out. So after studying that graph, it does tell me that with a different catback, I'm probably going to see even a little bit more. I might see into the 430 range on SAE corrected, and I might see even into the closer to the 440-ish range standard correction factor on the dyno with a different catback setup for the car, getting rid of the stock catback. However, of course, we know everything is super, super delayed, so I'm still thinking I'll probably bite the bullet and maybe order something so that over the winter I can install it, because it'll probably take that long to almost get in at this point. And then re-dyno in the spring and see if we hit 430-ish kind of range SAE or 440 standard to the wheels, which is just amazing. It's a lot to be said for the 5.7 Hemi that honestly with just a couple modifications like that you can be putting out that kind of power. And the cool thing is the car will run unbelievably reliably at that point. You're not pushing crazy boost through the engine, stressing it out. You're not really stressing the internals. You literally just changed the cam profile, adjusted your tuning for a higher octane fuel, and a little bit freer flowing exhaust, and all of a sudden you're hitting some unbelievably great numbers that will run reliably for you as long as you're going to own the car. You're really not going to see much difference in reliability at that point because you're not stressing the internals, pushing a ton of boost and stuff like that through there. It's pretty impressive and kind of a cool way just to add reliable power with not much work involved, which is super, super cool. There you go, guys. We did it. Scatpack numbers out of a 5.7 Hemi. Now if I can just find another manual stock Scatpack to race so that we take the transmissions out of the equation, so you can really see, you know, car for car, how different it is, how similar it is power-wise. I mean, man, that is the matchup I am looking for. I mean, having said that, if you're in the Edmonton area and you have a stock Scatpack that is a manual, maybe on a tire, I guess, but otherwise totally stock, nothing done to the engine or anything like that, man, if you guys would like to either organize coming to a street legal night at the track with me, or maybe we can find a quiet, private chunk of road that we could get together and do a couple runs just for comparison's sake for the channel, please hit me up. My Instagram is at @TrackpackRT. On Instagram, it's a super easy way to just fire me a direct message on there, and then we can maybe hook up and hopefully get some more good content for comparison on the channel. That would be great. Until then, I will probably be still trying my luck at the track, just seeing if I can find a manual Scatpack or manual 392 SRT car just to line up with and just kind of compare, just to see, so we can really get like an apples to apples comparison with the same transmission, just a souped up 5.7 versus a stock Scatpack, so you guys can really see the difference and how the two cars compare. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for following me on this journey. We got more stuff coming. I've already got a couple things coming for the car right now. And thanks so much for tuning in and sticking with me with this build. It's been quite a ride, guys, and I really appreciate you guys joining me for it. Anyways, to the next one. Catch you guys later.